It's the first half of the 21st century. Looking to get a job in an ordinary office space, a representative of the species Homo erectus walks in. You've been instructed to show him the ropes around here. The problem, however, is that things are a bit off. First, you'll have to wait until Homo erectus crawls out from under the table and gets over the initial shock of everything. Throughout this, he will also break half the furniture with a stick or a primitive axe. If you're unlucky, he'll probably hit you with it while you're rescuing a frightened colleague. And as soon as you think all is finally well, the erectus will kindle a fire from a burning candle. He will take out a no longer fresh piece of meat and get to roasting it. Don't ask where he got the meat from either. After all, we're talking about an ancient human ancestor in a modern-day office. This is what you would look like if you found yourself in the society of the future a million years from now. People, their way of life, and technologies will all change beyond recognition. This is an indisputable fact. But what exactly would it all become in a million years? To understand the future, scientists look to the past, to the time of Homo erectus, for example. It was Homo erectus that represented humanity a million years earlier. It was then that people had only just begun to gather into primitive groups, and their greatest achievements were the use of a stone axe and fire. Many millennia of evolution have since turned them, the primitive savages, into us. This is the first thing Thomas Mayland, who studies bioinformatics, pays attention to. On the scale of species and not the individual, it is not the strongest that survives at all. The planet is dominated by the one who has more offspring. Some species of animals give birth to a few young, but are better taken care of so that they survive. Others bring numerous litters, not really worrying about their future fate at all. And then the liveliest ones will remain alive. In the same way, people evolved as a biological species. That branch of primitive man, in which there were more offspring, became widespread. Over the next million years, evolution will continue. To be honest, no one has set out to really make forecasts for such a long period. But everyone certainly admits the options sound pretty awesome. Scientists are still trying to calculate possible changes hundreds of thousands of years in advance. And the main principle of evolution tells us the following. It's not the strongest, healthiest, and most beautiful that will dominate, per se, but more specifically, those who will have more children. These are harsh statistics. In the case of large-scale disasters, the larger the group, the more of its representatives will be able to survive. But still, modern people live much better compared to their distant ancestors. Those people had to work hard to obtain their food, and today, in most cases, we have no problems with acquiring food at all. What we do have are problems with its excess. In fact, obesity can provoke quite a predictable change regarding the future of people. Their physiology will be reorganized in such a way that the intestines will become much shorter in order to absorb less food. But the rules of the game will still be dictated not by food, but by the same factor of reproduction. Animals choose their mates based on certain traits they find attractive. It could be bright colors, big horns, or an impressive mating dance. Obviously, some partners also appear more attractive to people than others. And here, something very changeable comes to play within the natural evolutionary process, the concepts regarding beauty. Among the ancient Maya, the round shape of the head was considered especially attractive, and strabismus was the pinnacle of attractiveness. The modern African tribe Amandebele considers a long neck to be the key feature of beauty. Those enviable brides with the longest necks become wives faster and give birth to more children. If people all over had a single, consistent criterion for defining beauty, then it would be possible to imagine the appearance of future generations. For example, what if it was a long nose? For thousands of years, people with a long nose, attractive in the opinion of society as a whole, would give way to more offspring. And this feature would become fixed at the genetic level. This is how evolution works, but not in the case of man. Nature has lost its leadership position in matters of human survival. 100 years ago, everything may have been decided by natural selection, but now this is no longer the case. The development of our species is now influenced by technology, science, medicine, and other things that benefit civilization. Why stop at only transplantation, brain surgery, artificial implants, and genetic engineering? Scientists are already able to do other fantastic things. They can remove damaged fragments of the brain and even program embryos. A person can eliminate genetic diseases at the embryonic stage, or set external parameters ahead of time, such as eye and hair color, face shape, and more. On one hand, there is the incredible prospect of creating a healthier and more accomplished generation. On the other hand, there is always the question of ethics. Many human experiments are prohibited. The human body has not been studied as well as it might seem, especially the activity of the brain and the genes. Therefore, any serious manipulation can lead to human casualties. But after about 100,000, maybe 500,000 years, science will likely reach the required level. Patients will be able to choose the appearance of their future children and make genetic changes in their own bodies as well. And perhaps they will improve technology too. All those movies and stories where people have cameras in the eyes and chips in the brain are no longer just science fiction. Elon Musk founded the medical research company Neuralink. Its goal is to develop brain implants that will allow a person to connect to electronic devices, including a digital version of themselves. Such implants would significantly expand overall human capabilities in, for example, the field of memory. Compared with the primitive communal system, the social life of modern man is much more complicated. Think about it. Sometimes it's impossible to even remember the names of all the people you've met personally. Chips can solve this problem, and the prototypes of such chips have already been developed. From a biological point of view, the researchers of our time are ready for the modernization of the human body. They can even implant a chip in the brain, but do not yet know how to make it properly respond to brain signals. Now, the pacemaker or prosthesis performs the natural tasks of the part of the body in place of which it was installed. But in the future, technology will be used not to simply treat injuries, but to improve the human body as a whole, making it healthier. Smart glasses, which are just beginning to be actively developed, will turn into lenses, thus leading to the eye camera, like in science fiction movies. In fact, the transformation of Homo sapiens into a hybrid technological species is already well underway. In Google Glass, there is no speaker for sound transmission. Instead, sound waves enter directly into the inner ear via the vibrations in the skull. Fiction? Nope. Perhaps you just haven't thought about how hearing aids work. Some of these medical devices utilize such a technology, and others function directly on the auditory nerve. Therefore, it is quite logical to assume that after 1,000,000 years, a person will become something akin to a cyborg. But even if this happens, it will be gradual. You know those old people who still grumble about all those smartphones? They talk about how they lived without them and everything was just fine, and how we don't need any virtual world. It's not real anyway. Sure, behavior is natural for people. First of all, everything new and unknown seems scary. And secondly, humanity is always trying to preserve something real, something that makes people human. This is one reason why there are moral and ethical barriers to human experimentation. However, even if humanity does not develop as a cyborg race, the appearance of people will still most certainly change. This issue is actively studied in bioinformatics. Here we again see nature and evolution come to the forefront. It turns out that as a percentage, the number of dark-skinned people on the planet is increasing faster than that of the light-skinned. Scientists predict that after a few generations, the average human skin tone will become darker than it is now. But such a change can occur not only because of the mixing of genes, but also because of space exploration. Scientist and artist Nikolai Lamb once met computational geneticist Alan Kwan. They brainstormed and created a portrait of the average Earthling in 100,000 years. It is assumed that on space stations or colonized planets, human skin will become darker. This will act like a tan that protects people from the ultraviolet radiation outside the Earth's atmosphere. The human eyes of the future will become as big as those of anime characters. In order for the body to adapt to the dim environment of alien colonies and the overall lack of sunlight, the eyes may even begin to glow, like those of nocturnal predators, thus improving vision in the dark. In doing so, the eyelids will become thicker to protect the eyes from harmful cosmic rays. Kwan even suggests that future humans may even develop lateral blinking, like the cephalopod from Men in Black, if you know what I'm talking about. Changing living conditions will lead to other improvements as well. In order to breathe easier with a lack of oxygen, the nostrils will increase in size. In order to keep warm better, the body of future people may again be covered with thick hair, as it was 1,000,000 years ago. But there will be another important change: a big forehead. Researchers studied about 100 human skulls from the past, whose owners lived in the 14th through 16th centuries. Scientists compared the data of almost 30 generations and found that the height of the forehead in humans has increased by almost 20%. And this is just a couple of hundred years. So in hundreds of millennia, the head of the average person would become larger, all in order to fit the enlarged brain. Now, all these models are reminiscent of science fiction, which, by the way, very often turns out to be prophetic. Think of Jules Verne with his hitherto unseen invention of the submarine. The same thing happened to the old Star Trek series. In it, the ship's crew used tablets, wireless headphones, a flip phone, and a smartwatch. This was back in 1966. And then the real first prototype of the tablet was created only 2 years later. The bottom line is that the appearance of people will depend on the direction in which humanity as a whole will develop. It is very difficult to predict the future at least 100 years ahead, let alone a million. Although there is another scenario. There are no spaceships and even advanced technologies in it, and instead humanity simply vegetates in poverty and hunger. Scientists predict such a prospect for us in just the next couple of hundred years. One of the reasons is that we will run out of resources. By 2022, there was a shortage of sand in the world. How is that possible? First, it is the second most consumed natural resource in the world, after water, of course. Secondly, the desert sands you might think of are not suitable for industry. The main part of the sand, which is mined in quarries, is used to create concrete. The grains of sand in the deserts are too smooth and rounded, so the building material from them would end up too fragile and unreliable. Then, around 2038, we'll run out of gold. This will be followed by oil, helium, lithium, and rare earth elements. And although the average consumer knows little about the use of these resources, they provide us with the life that we now have. But don't worry, our resources may not run out so fast. And generally speaking, this is not a particularly urgent problem for mankind, unlike global warming. Who would need concrete and oil if there's no clean drinking water left on the planet, or fertile land to grow food? Approximately 75% of the land, half of the rivers, and 40% of the world ocean have been seriously or even irreversibly affected by human activity. And scientists suspect that a sixth mass extinction is currently happening as we speak. No, you don't need a big deadly meteorite to do this. In total, since 1970, the number of mammals, birds, fish, amphibians, and reptiles has decreased by about 2/3, or almost 68%. So I would not be too concerned about how, in 100,000 years, people will have overly big eyes and heads. In the end, it will be considered either beautiful or just ordinary. The main thing is that we have at least some kind of future. What do you think will happen to humanity in a million years? Share your thoughts in the comments below.